Welcome back. Recon Africa has begun exploratory drilling for oil and gas in the Kavango East region. Conservationists and local communities are concerned over the potential environmental impact that such an extraction could have on this important ecosystem. The Okavango Basin is said to be an environmentally sensitive protected area that supplies the Okavango Delta with water. For an explanation, ReconAfrica's spokesperson, Ms. Claire Preece, now joins us with more. Good morning, Ms. Preece. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Well, let's start by tell us what is the latest on this oil and gas exploration?
Currently, we are drilling our first stratigraphic test well. Then we will be drilling our second stratigraphic test well. And we are completing our environmental impact assessment for our 2D seismic program.
All right, so what is the real story? Will Recon Africa be doing fracking in the oil exploration project?
No, the focus for us is conventional oil. Namibia is in a situation whereby they have areas that have never been drilled before, and it's a conventional play. And in effect, what happens is that conventional plays happen, and then it moves into unconventional plays. I'll give you an example. The Kavango Basin that we're looking at actually has the same kind of play as the Texas Permian Basin. It's the same kind of review as far as the geological perspective. But what we're looking at is the situation whereby, which was in the 1930s in Texas. So the focus then was conventional oil. Conventional oil went on for over 80 years there, and then it moved over to unconventional oil. Conventional oil and the work that for drilling is it's much more economical, it's much more feasible, and it's what geologically is there. We have done several different studies on the area. We have worked with geological experts that are based in Namibia and otherwise, and it's a conventional oil pit, which means that we will not frack.
Okay. The strength of Recon Africa's environmental impact assessment came under scrutiny. What methodologies were used, and how would you describe the soundness of this assessment?
So for stratigraphic test wells, it followed the normal methodology of an environmental impact assessment. There's various different studies that are put into the different volumes, which are part of the environmental impact assessment. So there was studies, there was stakeholder engagement reports that were done, there was flora and fauna, there was a groundwater report, there was archaeological, there was numerous studies that you have to do to complete an EIA to put it into the different volumes that make up the EIA. So Recon Africa did all those. We did stakeholder engagement, we did the regulatory consultation, we put it into the newspaper and otherwise. So this was for the stratigraphic test well that we have right now that's ongoing. We received our environmental clearance, and then from there we're now doing environmental impact assessment studies for the 2D seismic. We have done the same amount of research. We took in representatives from the Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Tourism, Ministry of Agriculture, Water and Land Reform. We took them all along the seismic line so they could see what we were doing, or we will be doing, hopefully. We basically shared, we did the information sessions both in East and West Kavango, which are regulatory consultation sessions. We had open houses as well, which means that we had information, which you're showing right now, which are an open sort of format where people can come and ask questions, and it's like a drop-in kind of situation. We held several community meetings. We're still holding community meetings, so everybody's on board with it from the 2D seismic perspective. And we did a vast amount too for our stratigraphic test wells. So we have the environmental clearance for that, and we're seeking to get the environmental clearance for the 2D seismic.
All right. Now, the World Wildlife Fund has asked for a holistic strategic environmental assessment. What are your views?
So it's interesting about that. I've actually done some work on SCAs and looking into that for different countries, actually, for the World Bank and otherwise. Typically, when strategic environmental assessments are done, it's from a policy and planning perspective from the government overall. It's not a proponent who does that. So looking at your environmental law and your oil and gas acts, you're in a situation now that for the impacts that would be from a stratigraphic test well, which is basically just a test to gather data, what we do is we drill down, we take out the core, which is the sands and the rocks underneath the ground, and we analyze it. Both the Ministry of Mines and Energy and the University of Namibia and the geological groups there are very keen to get this information because you don't have it in Namibia, so it's a very pertinent aspect to get. So we're just drilling to get the testing. For 2D seismic, the work that we will be doing, we've got environmentally trucks that are coming in that are much less impactful than other things. We also have the 2D seismic that we use. It's like a little disc that we have that doesn't have any wires. It's wireless, so you can offset it, and we just gather data. We only do it in the day. We don't do it otherwise, and we obviously follow all the environmental rules and regulations. Typically, for the initial phases of any kind of exploration, you wouldn't necessarily move into a SIA perspective. It would be something that the government would have to look at, but not just for oil and gas. They'd have to look at for mines as well. It'd probably be more something that you'd look at for your mining industry, because your mining industry is much farther along, and the impacts of all the different mines that you have in Namibia. You know, what are the aspects that are happening from them? Because a lot of them are in production. You've had situations of mines where you've had failures, so you'd have to look at all the impacts of that, because those are major impacts. You tend to not do a SIA when you have minor impacts. But I'm talking because I've done some research for this and for other countries, and I've been a proponent that's been helped training countries to do that. And I reviewed 42 different countries before. Right. So.
Now, earlier on you mentioned that you held information sessions, and there was one last week. How would you describe the perception around this project by the public?
It was interesting. The original plan was actually to have information sessions, and then the group that wanted to have these sessions, which was organized by an environmental group, they organized it. They're the ones who sent it out and had people come. They then changed it to an environmental impact consultation session. So information sessions and consultation sessions, so there's a regulatory consultation, there's information sessions, are very different. You have to sort of follow a process when you do an environmental impact regulatory consultation session. So we did do that. There was more questions, more interest, more dynamic interest, let's say, on the first session. They didn't want to follow what the norms are to sort of hold those regulatory consultation sessions. They wanted to sort of make their points clear. There was not as much information or queries about seismic. There was more queries about the stratigraphic test wells. So we answered the questions, but typically for regulatory consultations, you stay on focus for the 2D seismic or what you're talking about. In the afternoon session, that was the morning session. The afternoon session, it sort of followed along the lines of what typically how regulatory consultations take place. They basically brought up some good points. They asked us about some of the wildlife survey and monitoring that we're doing, and we're actually putting that into place. We're going to have somebody on our team who will be focused on that. So, and they brought up some points where, you know, where they would like to have some monitoring done, which we could probably tie into it. So it was actually a good session. I mean, there was a lot of dynamic and a lot of people's opinions and things. But they talked about actions that, you know, we're not going to put into place. So.
All right. Now, as you mentioned, you are currently busy with your first cast well. The exploration is clearly still at an early stage. Now, what is the working timeline and what follows should oil or gas be discovered?
Okay, so at this point in time, we're just looking, a stratigraphic test well is basically just to gather core. So all we do is, like I said, we drill down and we take the sands and we take the rocks, and then we're able to analyze that. There will be representatives as well from the Ministry of Mines and Energy who will do that analysis, as well as representatives from the University of Namibia who are very keen to get this core. So what we will only be able to do after these test wells is to do a verification of what we believe is there, and that will be almost like an additional analysis of the analysis we've already done by looking at the aerodynamic data and also looking at the geological data that there is already. So it won't be, it'll just be able to demonstrate what the basin holds.
All right. Now, there were also calls by the Governor, Wakudumo, for employment creation for locals. Exactly how does ReconAfrica then intend on roping in the locals?
Yeah, listen, we're very keen on doing that. We want to make a difference in the Kavango East and Kavango West. Our focus, obviously, is to work with as many local and regional people as possible. So currently on site for our first well, we have about 90% of the people are Namibian. We have situations whereby we have 2 people that are on the rig floor, who basically have shown a keen ability and everything else, and have a good work ethic and have good abilities to do the work. And so, long story short, we're in a situation with them where we're training them up so that they will be able to be promoted and otherwise. We did the same thing. We have somebody that's an HSC that's from Rundu itself. So he's come on and everything else, and we have personnel that both work on the site, so on the rig and the rig floor. We also have personnel that from the third-party contractors for the camp and the food and otherwise, and we try to hire as many locals as possible when we ever have to do any kind of work on the site and otherwise, and so it's working out quite well. We also have people on site that are from the different ministries, currently from Ministry of Mines and Energy, who are doing rolling training programs, who come in, who get to work on site with people who have a vast amount of expertise in the oil and gas drilling, who are sharing that. We're also working with geologists who are sharing that, and we're actually even to the point where one of the local geologists gave the people that are there some different work, sort of like program initiatives where they had to sort of do the questions and answer and move things forward. So we're trying to do it as integrated as possible and trying to focus on that. We also we will also have an integrated program to sort of always hire as many people as possible as we move forward. In exploration, there's only so much we can do. There'll be more that we'll be able to hire for seismic, let's say. But on a stratigraphic test well, we'll still do as much as we can.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Claire Preece, for that explanation.